Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a massive, historic, legal earthquake that is currently shaking big tech to its core. And we'll be exploring a revolutionary technological shift toward decentralized social platforms. Honestly, if you rely on major centralized networks for your business, your community, or your content distribution, the structural landscape of the internet is literally shifting right beneath your feet. We're going to dive deep into the mounting legal pressures facing some of the world's biggest tech companies, and then analyze the emerging alternative architectures derived from our source material that are stepping up to replace them.
Okay, let's kick things off with a staggering number, $1.4 trillion. That is the actual civil penalty demand currently threatening Meta. And to be totally clear, that's not a typo and it's not some sensationalized projection. This is a very real, massive legal threat bearing down on the company right now. It really signals a major turning point in how regulatory bodies view the core business models of these massive, centralized platforms. The whole era of unchecked data collection and attention-based monetization is under unprecedented scrutiny, and a penalty demand of this sheer size, well, it tells us that lawmakers are looking to impose consequences that could fundamentally alter how these platforms operate.
So, where is this staggering demand coming from? It's a lawsuit filed by 4 U.S. states: California, Colorado, Kentucky, and New Jersey. Currently playing out in Oakland, the lawsuit alleges that Meta deliberately engineered platforms, like Facebook and Instagram, to actually addict young users. According to the plaintiffs, the company used highly specific design choices. Think infinite scrolling, constant push notifications, and algorithm-driven content delivery specifically to maximize the exact amount of time young people spend glued to their screens. On top of that, the states allege the company systematically misled the public about the safety of these very features. The way they calculated this historic $1.4 trillion penalty was by multiplying the estimated statutory violations against millions of adolescent users over a period of time.
What's truly wild is that Meta itself has openly acknowledged how unprecedented this threat is. In their own official court filings, they stated that a sanction of this size has no analog in the history of consumer protection enforcement. Now, typically, tech executives might brush off early regulatory fines as just the cost of doing business, right? Kind of an aggressive opening negotiation gambit. But a penalty demand extending into the trillions, that completely changes the conversation. It's a figure so unimaginably large that financial markets are actually starting to price in the risk, realizing that consumer protection enforcement has entered an entirely new, incredibly aggressive phase.
Section 1. Big Tech's trillion-dollar crisis. Let's contextualize exactly what this crisis means for the architecture of the centralized internet as we know it, and why this is an absolute turning point for everyone online.
To really put the stakes into perspective here, Meta's entire market capitalization hovers around roughly $1.5 trillion. So when a company's potential legal liabilities start to closely match its entire market value, we're not just looking at a standard regulatory fine anymore. We're looking at a structural headwind. A standard fine, it can be absorbed through quarterly earnings. But a $1 trillion penalty? That's an existential threat to the underlying attention-harvesting business model itself. It forces us to ask a tough question. Can a platform remain financially viable if its core mechanics for keeping users retained are legally classified as harmful and then subjected to fines that eclipse its total revenue?
And the thing is, this legal momentum is already yielding very concrete results at the state level. Take a look at the recent case in New Mexico, where the state secured a massive $375 million verdict against Meta. This verdict is incredibly significant because it proves that courts are completely willing to enforce heavy financial penalties based on these exact consumer protection claims. It sets a very real legal precedent, showing that regulatory bodies can and absolutely will successfully prosecute these cases, heavily penalizing tech giants when their platform design choices are found to violate state laws regarding user well-being.
Moving right along to Section 2, the systemic fragility. Because, as you'll see, this legal pressure isn't just an isolated incident for one single company. It's actually a systemic issue impacting the entire wider tech landscape. Just look at this list. We are seeing a massive consolidation of legal action happening simultaneously all across the industry. Lawmakers and parents are teaming up to target the entire ecosystem of centralized attention-based platforms. For instance, right now there are federal COPPA claims originating from 29 different states. In case you aren't familiar, COPPA stands for the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which is a federal law designed to protect the personal info of kids under 13. And alongside these federal claims, thousands of private mass torts. And the targets are definitely not limited to just Meta.
Companies like Snapchat, YouTube, and TikTok are all facing similar interconnected legal challenges regarding how they manage user data and design their interfaces.
So how do they respond to all this? Well, Meta has deployed a very specific and incredibly narrow legal defense strategy. They are essentially arguing that because social media addiction isn't officially recognized as a psychiatric condition in medical diagnostic manuals, their marketing claims about platform safety couldn't technically be classified as deceptive. This is legally fascinating because it's a defense relying entirely on a medical technicality rather than, a direct denial of the actual user behaviors the states are describing. It's a highly calculated legal maneuver that focuses strictly on the precise definitions of consumer protection law.
Which brings us to the real-world implications for everyday users, creators, and businesses. Think about it. What happens to your localized network or your business if the centralized platforms you rely on every single day are suddenly forced to radically change their algorithms, alter their monetization structures, or just shut down certain features entirely to survive these massive lawsuits? If a platform gets fundamentally restructured by a court order, communities relying on it face what the source material aptly calls sudden digital eviction. Years of audience building, all that content creation, it could be severely disrupted literally overnight simply because the host platform had to pivot its legal strategy.
That brings us to Section 3, the shift to SNaaS. This intense systemic fragility is driving a massive, rapid shift in the tech industry, moving beyond older paradigms into alternative architectures that are vastly more resilient.
Our source material introduces a brilliant concept known as Web4. Now, you've probably heard of Web3, which popularized the idea of decentralization, but often struggled with really clunky, complex user experiences that just alienated everyday folks. Web4 represents the next evolution. It's a paradigm heavily focused on creating highly adaptive, intelligent digital environments that offer true data sovereignty, but, and this is key, without the technical friction of managing crypto wallets and complex onboarding. And data sovereignty? That simply means that an organization or an individual actually owns the underlying information and relationships they generate online, rather than just renting access to them through a centralized corporate platform. A really prominent example of this movement presented in the research is SNaaS, which stands for Social Networks as a Service. Pioneered by companies like Linkspreed, this model moves way beyond traditional software as a service. Instead of just subscribing to some disjointed, isolated app, SNaaS is purposefully designed to deliver complete, independent community infrastructure right out of the box. It gives organizations the foundational tools to host their own networks, granting them the autonomy of a major tech company, but without needing to build the complex software from absolute scratch.
This side-by-side comparison really spells out how stark the paradigm shift is. Under traditional software-as-a-service models, users act as entirely passive consumers. Your data is collected for targeted ads, and your experience is dictated by black box algorithms designed purely to maximize your engagement. But in contrast, the SNaaS model positions users and creators as empowered stakeholders with absolute data sovereignty. A huge feature here is the algorithm-free native feed. So instead of an opaque algorithm deciding what content you get to see based on engagement metrics, an algorithm-free feed just delivers content sequentially from the actual people and communities you explicitly choose to follow. It finally brings predictability back to the user experience.
Section 4. Linkspreed's ATRIUM framework. Now let's look at how this independence is actually built in real-world applications using specific technological frameworks. To understand how SNaaS operates mechanically under the hood, the source highlights Linkspreed's ATRIUM framework. Rather than forcing your organization into a rigid cookie-cutter corporate layout where you have zero control over the back end, ATRIUM acts as a highly modular, decentralized blueprint. It features a decentralized plugin marketplace that allows community architects to seamlessly integrate their own custom workflows. So in plain English, this means if a medical community needs a highly specific identity verification step or a creator network wants a unique peer-to-peer payment gateway, they can just modify the platform's core architecture to support exactly that. And the best part? No asking a centralized authority for permission. One of the absolute coolest aspects detailed in the research is just how lightning-fast this setup process has become. By leveraging advanced AI engines like Google's GenKit, frameworks like ATRIUM let users deploy a professional-grade platform almost instantly. Literally, you just input a natural language description of your community, for example, a private network for independent academic researchers. The AI takes that prompt and automatically configures the structural layout, sets up verified member directories, and establishes your native content feeds. It essentially automates the entire job of a traditional platform development team in a matter of seconds. It's a real game changer.
This technology also tackles a massive historical barrier: infrastructure costs. Historically, hosting a robust, self-contained social platform would financially ruin independent creators or small organizations because of the immense server costs. But the ATRIUM roadmap outlines how decentralized networks completely bypass these traditional infrastructure hurdles, deploying secure environments incredibly efficiently. Furthermore, they incorporate smart tools like bot-resistant verified ad bidding. This simply means that if an independent network actually chooses to run ads, the system ensures advertisers are paying for real human views, filtering out automated bot traffic. This inherently increases the value and integrity of the platform's independent economy.
Finally, Section 5. Securing digital independence. All this legal data and all this new technology leads us to a crucial, absolute must-know takeaway regarding the future of online communities.
The source material makes a really compelling argument. To insulate your business or your localized community from the trillion-dollar chaos currently engulfing these centralized tech giants, your organization absolutely must take ownership of its foundational infrastructure. By building legal, independent, and compliant social spaces using Web4 SNaaS models, creators and businesses can ensure absolute data sovereignty. You finally gain control over your underlying code, your data pipelines, and your compliance frameworks. In this model, your community is no longer the product being passively sold off to advertisers. Instead, it becomes a self-sustaining ecosystem fully controlled by the people who actually use it.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a critical question to chew on, based on the clear trajectory of these industry shifts. When centralized platforms are forced to fundamentally fracture or completely change their operations under the crushing weight of historic lawsuits and algorithmic decay, who will truly own the digital space you've built? Understanding exactly where your data lives and who controls your digital infrastructure might just be the single most important factor in defining the future of your online presence. Thanks for learning with me today, and I'll catch you in the next one.